I still have the bike. I haven't ridden it since that night, and I probably never will again. Every time I look at the tiny scratch on the handlebars, I remember exactly where it came from, and why the police asked me not to tell anyone until their investigation was over. I commute by bicycle almost every day. I live outside Portland, and my office is about 10 miles away. Driving during rush hour is miserable, so cycling became my routine. Same route, same roads, same coffee stop every Tuesday and Thursday. After a while, you start recognizing people without ever speaking to them. The older guy who walked his golden retriever before sunrise. The woman who always watered her flowers around 6. The teenager who skateboarded to school wearing giant headphones. You notice patterns, which is why I noticed when one changed. Every Wednesday morning, I crossed an old bike trail that cut behind an abandoned paper mill. The trail wasn't hidden or creepy. Plenty of cyclists used it because it shaved 15 minutes off the commute. About halfway through the trail sat one of those public bike repair stations with an air pump and a few tools attached by steel cables. One Wednesday, someone had left a bright yellow cycling glove hanging from one of the tools. Didn't think much of it. The next Wednesday, it was still there. The Wednesday after that, there were 2 gloves. Perfectly matched, neatly folded over the handle. I figured whoever lost them never came back. Life went on. A month later, I realized something strange. Every Wednesday, there was something new. A water bottle, a bike light, a patched inner tube, a tiny multi-tool. Nothing valuable enough for someone to steal. Just random cycling gear. Always clean. Always carefully arranged. Always appearing overnight. I joked about it with a coworker named Chris. Maybe cyclists are leaving offerings to the bike gods, he laughed. Or somebody's got OCD. That would have been a better explanation. Late September brought shorter days. One Wednesday, I worked late and didn't leave until after sunset. The trail was almost empty, just my headlight cutting through the darkness. When I reached the repair station, I instinctively looked over. This week's item wasn't equipment. It was a laminated photo. It showed 4 cyclists standing together after what looked like a charity ride. 3 faces had black marker drawn over them. The 4th wasn't crossed out. It had a red circle around the face instead. The picture disappeared before morning. I convinced myself someone was pulling a weird prank. Still, I stopped lingering near the station. A week later, I noticed another cyclist slowing beside me. He looked around my age. Road bike, reflective vest, friendly enough. "You see this stuff?" he asked. "The repair station?" I nodded. I thought I was imagining it. "So it isn't just me." He introduced himself as Aaron. Apparently, he'd been riding the trail for years. "The object started about 6 months ago," he said. "I figured someone was making art or something." "The photo is different." "Yeah." He looked uncomfortable. "Really different." We rode together for another mile before splitting off. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I started paying attention. Every Wednesday, every item. I even took pictures with my phone. Not because I thought it was dangerous, just because it was weird. One week there was a race medal. The next, a cracked cycling computer. Then an old helmet with a race number still attached. Each object looked like it belonged to a different person. Around Thanksgiving, I overslept and hit the trail later than usual. As I approached the repair station, I saw someone standing there. Finally, the person leaving everything. I slowed. He wore expensive cycling clothes, helmet, gloves. Bike leaned against the station. His back faced me. He seemed to be arranging something carefully. I called out, "Morning!" He didn't react. I got closer. "Hey." Nothing. Then he climbed onto his bike and rode away without turning around. Fast. Really fast. I almost followed him. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. I rolled up to the station. A pair of cycling shoes sat there, perfectly clean. Inside one shoe was a folded piece of paper. It only had a number, no words, no initials, just 417. That night I searched local cycling clubs, race numbers and trail markers, nothing. A few weeks later, I mentioned it to Aaron. His expression changed immediately. I've seen numbers. What? Different ones. Like what? I remember 389. We stared at each other. Neither of us knew what to make of it. Christmas came. Cold mornings meant fewer riders. One icy Wednesday, I reached the repair station before sunrise. Something crunched beneath my tire. Zip ties. Dozens of black zip ties scattered across the pavement. Brand new. At the station sat another photo. This one showed a cycling event. Hundreds of riders. One person had been circled. I recognized him instantly. Aaron. I looked around so quickly I nearly fell over. The woods were silent. Nothing moved. I called Aaron before work. He answered, half asleep. You need to stop using that trail. What? I'll explain later. He laughed nervously. Dude, you're freaking me out. I sent him the photo. 10 minutes later, he called back. His voice sounded completely different. I'm going to the police. The officer who met us listened patiently, then asked the obvious question. Has anyone threatened either of you? No. Been followed? Not that I know of. He took copies of the photos anyway. Honestly, I expected nothing to happen. People leave weird things in public all the time. 3 days later, the detective called. He wanted every picture I'd taken. Every single Wednesday. I asked why. He paused, then said something I'll never forget. Because your photos accidentally documented something we've been trying to understand. He wouldn't explain further. Weeks passed. Nothing. Then in February, he called again. He asked me to come to the station. There were boxes covering a conference table. Inside each box sat personal belongings. Bike computers, helmets, shoes, gloves, water bottles, race medals, everything I'd seen, and dozens more. The detective pointed to my phone photos. These weren't random. What do you mean? They were being displayed in order. Order? He nodded. By date. I didn't understand. Then he opened a folder. Inside were missing person reports. Not hundreds, not dozens. 17. Every person had disappeared after solo cycling trips over the previous 3 years. Every object matched one of the missing cyclists. The gloves, the medal, the helmet, the shoes. Everything belonged to someone who had never come home. I felt sick. So, the items were trophies? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. A month later, they arrested a man. 46, successful physical therapist, competitive cyclist, no criminal record. He had volunteered at charity rides for years. Apparently, he liked helping injured riders. The detective never told me exactly how the evidence came together, only that my weekly photographs established a timeline they never had before. The case made national news for a few days. Then everyone moved on. The trail reopened after investigators finished searching the surrounding woods. Most people started riding it again. I didn't. There's one detail the police asked me not to share until the trial ended. The trial is over now. Remember the number inside the shoe? It wasn't random. Every missing cyclist had one. The numbers weren't race entries. They weren't locker numbers. They weren't GPS coordinates. They were inventory numbers. The man kept detailed records of every item he took from each victim. Helmet, shoes, gloves, watch, light, phone. Each object received its own catalog number before being stored. Item 417 happened to be the pair of shoes I'd found. The detectives only realized that after searching his storage unit. Thousands of neatly labeled plastic bins filled an entire warehouse. Most belonged to ordinary cyclists he'd met over the years. People he'd photographed at events. People who sold him used gear. People completely alive. Mixed among them were 17 bins that belonged to people who weren't. The display at the repair station wasn't random art. It was his way of checking his catalog. He'd remove one item from storage every Wednesday, compare it against his records, photograph it in place, and put it back before sunrise. Like a collector inspecting a prized collection. The detective told me something else before I left. They only caught him because one Wednesday, instead of replacing the shoes immediately, he stopped to talk to another cyclist. Me. That tiny delay shifted his routine just enough for a patrol officer, working an unrelated case nearby, to notice his van parked beside a trail entrance where it had no reason to be. One pointless conversation, less than 30 seconds. That's all it took to interrupt a habit he'd followed for years. Sometimes I think about how close I came to riding after him that morning. But what keeps me awake isn't wondering what would have happened if I had. It's knowing that for almost a year, I smiled and nodded at the same man during charity rides without realizing every Wednesday he was quietly taking attendance, making sure his collection was still complete. I never told the police the entire truth because one detail makes me sound paranoid. But if I'd ignored that detail, I'd probably be the one they were looking for instead of the man they eventually arrested. For almost 6 months, someone was using my cycling route to practice. That's the only way I know how to describe it. I got into road cycling after I quit smoking. Every morning before work, I'd ride about 25 miles through farmland outside Madison, Wisconsin. It was quiet, mostly flat, and there were long stretches where you wouldn't see another person for 10 or 15 minutes. Most riders liked that. After what happened, I can't imagine why. One Monday in early spring, I noticed fresh white spray paint on the road. Not graffiti, just a clean white line stretching across the pavement. I assumed the county had marked something for construction. About half a mile later, there was another one, then another. Each line was perfectly straight, almost like an invisible finish line crossing the road. I didn't think much of it. By Friday, the paint was gone. The rain had washed most of it away. The next Monday, new lines appeared. Not in the same places, different locations. Always on Monday mornings, always gone before the weekend. After about a month, curiosity got the better of me. I stopped beside one and looked closer. The paint wasn't on the shoulder. It stretched across both lanes. Someone had measured the road carefully. It looked deliberate. A pickup truck slowed beside me. The driver rolled his window down. "You counting them too?" I laughed. "I was just wondering who keeps painting these." He shrugged. "My wife says they're surveying." Then he drove off. That answer didn't feel right. There weren't any utility flags. No construction signs. Nothing ever happened near the lines. Life kept moving. Then I started seeing the SUV, dark gray, older Ford Explorer. Nothing unusual about it except where it was parked. Every Tuesday and Thursday, it'd be sitting on a dirt pull-off overlooking one of the longest straightaways. Engine off, driver inside, never getting out. At first I assumed he was birdwatching or talking on the phone. People park in strange places all the time. But then I realized something. He never faced the scenery. His SUV always faced the road, like he was waiting for traffic. One morning I waved. No response. The windshield reflected too much sunlight to see inside. The following week he was parked 2 miles farther down. Same routine, engine off, facing the road. I mentioned it to another cyclist at a coffee shop. "You mean the gray Explorer? You've seen it?" "Yeah. He creeps me out." "Ever see who's driving?" "No." That should have bothered me more than it did. Cyclists become creatures of habit. Same roads, same schedule. You stop questioning familiar things until they're not familiar anymore. Around the middle of May, I flattened my rear tire. I pulled onto the shoulder and started replacing the tube. While I worked, I heard gravel crunching. The Explorer. It rolled slowly past me. Really slowly. The driver's window stayed closed. The vehicle didn't stop, didn't speed up. It just crawled by, maybe 5 miles an hour. I looked toward the driver. I still couldn't see his face. The windows weren't tinted. The sun just hit them perfectly. After another 100 yards, it accelerated and disappeared. I told myself he was making sure I didn't need help. Except, most people ask. They don't silently creep past someone at walking speed. The next morning, there were fresh white lines again. This time, I noticed something new. Every painted line was on a downhill section. Not uphill, not flat, always downhill. I started paying attention to my speed whenever I crossed one. 32, 38, 41, 44. Every line happened to be where riders naturally reach their highest speed. That realization sat in my stomach all day. Saturday morning, I decided to change my route. Completely different roads, different direction. About 20 miles into the ride, I stopped at a gas station for water. Guess what was parked there? The gray Explorer, across the lot, facing my bike. I froze. Coincidences happen, but not many. A man stepped out carrying coffee. Middle-aged, ball cap, sunglasses, average build, nothing memorable. He looked at me for maybe half a second before getting back inside and driving away. I memorized the license plate. When I got home, I searched public records. Nothing. It wasn't stolen. Registration was current. That almost disappointed me. A stolen vehicle would have been easier to explain. For the next week, I didn't see it. I relaxed. Then Thursday morning, I hit one of the painted lines. A loud pop exploded beside me. My bike swerved violently. I barely stayed upright. A soda can had burst beneath my tire, not because I hit it, because it had been placed upright exactly when my wheel crossed the painted line. Someone had shaken it first. Sticky cola covered my frame. If I'd been descending just a little faster, losing control would have been easy. There wasn't another can anywhere nearby, just one. Standing upright, exactly on the line, I reported it to the sheriff. The deputy listened politely. Kids playing a prank? Maybe. You actually saw someone place it? No. He nodded. Hard to investigate. I understood. Honestly, I would have said the same thing. Summer arrived. More cyclists started using those roads. I almost forgot about everything. Until Father's Day. Hundreds of riders participated in a local charity event. One of the routes overlapped part of my commute. Near mile 22, volunteers directed riders through an intersection. As I passed, I saw the Explorer parked behind portable toilets, watching, not participating, just watching. This time, I got a clear look at the driver. He wasn't cheering, wasn't filming. He held a clipboard, looking down, then back at cyclists, writing something, again and again. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, I called the event organizer. I know this sounds strange, I said, but did you have someone recording rider numbers? No. What do you mean? I described the SUV. There was a long pause. No, she finally answered. Nobody should have been doing that. A week later, I bought a cheap action camera and mounted it beneath my handlebars, mostly for peace of mind. Tuesday morning, I rode as usual. No Explorer. Wednesday, nothing. Thursday, still nothing. Friday morning, I almost left the camera home. Good thing I didn't. About 15 miles into the ride, I noticed fresh paint. Only one line. I crossed it. Nothing happened. Another quarter-mile later, I heard an engine behind me. The Explorer. It stayed back, maybe 300 feet. Never passing, never falling behind, just matching my speed. For nearly 4 miles, I finally turned onto a busier county highway. The SUV immediately turned around. Didn't continue. Didn't pass me. Just left. That afternoon, I reviewed the camera footage. I noticed something I hadn't seen while riding. Every few minutes, the SUV drifted toward the shoulder. Not enough to hit me, just enough to measure the distance. Again, 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 like the driver was practicing. I sent the footage to the sheriff. This time, they took it seriously. Mostly because another cyclist had reported something similar 2 counties away. Different road, same vehicle. 2 detectives met me the following week. They asked dozens of questions. Had I ever spoken to the driver? No. Had he threatened me? No. Did he ever make contact? No. Everything he did existed in that uncomfortable space where nothing was technically illegal. Watching, following, measuring. Weeks passed. Then one morning, the detectives called. They'd executed a search warrant. The driver had worked for a company that tested road safety equipment years earlier. His garage contained laser measuring devices, survey wheels, traffic counters, drone footage of rural roads. thousands of hours of cycling videos, mostly recorded without riders knowing. But that wasn't why they arrested him. Buried on one hard drive were detailed notebooks, not about bicycles, about collisions, near misses, crash angles, reaction times, stopping distances, how cyclists responded when startled at different speeds. He'd spent years collecting data by creating harmless but escalating situations, the painted lines, objects in the road, following riders, watching charity events. Everything had been an experiment. The detectives believed he was building profiles of cyclists who rode predictable routes, people who wouldn't notice gradual changes, people who rode alone. I asked the detective something that had been bothering me since the beginning. What were the white lines for? He slid a photograph across the table. It showed one of my rides from a drone. Each painted line matched the exact point where a rider entered the camera's field of view. They weren't road markings, they were camera calibration marks. Every time I crossed one, hidden cameras recorded how I reacted to whatever he'd placed ahead. The soda can, loose gravel, a branch, even his own vehicle. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was collecting behavioral data. Before I left, the detective handed me a printed map recovered from the suspect's garage. It contained dozens of cycling routes. Mine was highlighted in yellow. Next to it was a note. Not my name, not my address. Just 6 words. Subject notices environmental changes too quickly. Replace. I asked what replace meant. The detective looked down at the file before answering. We found another highlighted road underneath yours. Another cyclist, different town, different schedule. Someone who hadn't reported anything. Someone who probably never realized they'd become the next person being quietly studied. I still ride. Just not on quiet country roads anymore. Because every time I pass a perfectly straight white line painted across pavement, I don't wonder who put it there. I wonder how many people crossed it, without ever realizing someone was timing the exact moment they became predictable.